Hello and welcome back to the final installment in this particular Copic scene coloring breakdown video series. I'm Amy with Sweet November Stamps, co-owner and illustrator behind the artwork that we are working with today. This particular card is using one of the lovely princesses from the Royal Treatment clear stamp set, as well as the fairy silhouettes. And the little castle is from the Horizon Lines Seaside Cliffs stamp set. I've stamped everything up on Catherine Pooler white cardstock. It's cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, a standard A2 card size. And yeah, in previous videos, we've colored up our princess and done a white dress. We've done our floral field. And now we're going to do the rest of our kind of dusky background scene to complete the whole story that we're telling. So with that, we are going to dive in and be using a lot of violets and blues for the rest of the card. Okay, so I'm going to start with our sky. And I am going to be using B60 for the sky. And I'm going to have it start back here and just let that, we'll fill that whole space. Not going to worry about any clouds this time around. And I'm going to just let that, and I can go right over that castle because it's all going to be in the same group of color families, all in those blue violets and blues. Alright, and I'm not being fussy. I'm going to create some little hillsides and stuff back here that are all going to kind of come right over. So as I was mentioning in the last video, you know, this is that time of day I'm trying to capture after the sun has gone down on a long summer day, but you still have those last few hours of sunlight that you can be outside and enjoying the great outdoors. And I'm going to come in with the colorless blender, and from the top of the card down, I'm just going to just soften that and lighten it until, there we go. And I almost even let it fade to white because I just want a really light look, and that'll brighten back up as that colorless blender dries. Okay. As for our background scene, now I'm going to come in with, I think, let's start with some BV. Do I want 31 or 01? Decisions. I think we'll go 31. A little bit more gray tone to it. And we're just going to let that kind of meld right into working carefully around our little fairies, but otherwise just getting a quick wash of color. And again, I can go right over that castle because it's all going to be pretty monochromatic back here. Just let that meld right into the grassy field back there. Careful around this fairy too. And our princess, we don't want to accidentally pull any of that brown from her hair out into our landscape. Now you'll notice, I let that BV31 go right over, kind of where the field ends, the field of flowers ends, and our kind of hillside begins. Now that I'm thinking about it, I should have left a little halo of white around these fairies, but I wasn't thinking ahead. What I can do, since I've got my colorless blender out here, before I go any darker around them, I can push with the colorless blender. It'd be more effective if I had left white cardstock, but in a pinch, I can take the colorless blender and kind of lighten the area around each of our fairies, so it looks like they kind of got a light around each one. That'll help them stand out a little bit too. All right, so we've got that base. So now we got to start creating the details and building up our background now that we've got our base down. And I'm going to do that by bringing in some BV34. Is. And over here, down close to our flower field, I'm just gonna kind of sketch in like there's a big old kind of hedge or bush kind of growing up in here. So I'm doing the base of it, and we're going to start building up some of that color around it. And we'll be putting in some smaller little bushes and stuff growing down here. Where it kind of turns from field into kind of just long grass area. And just like our little flowers, it's just kind of squiggling in a little bit of color here and there. And I also want to create kind of a tree type hedge kind of in front of and leading into that castle. Throw that further back. So we'll start building up from there as well. Have that kind of live back here. Come forward. All right, I need to get my hillside in next. I'm gonna do that with, I think, let's go B63. And let's say it lands back here. We'll just start our hills back behind our castle. And maybe it'll have a little rise here, and then it'll dip back down. I'm not talking mountains, just really subtle little rolling hills. And we'll avoid our little glow from our, and then I'm going to leave space here for a little bit of a tree growing up out there. So I'm just going to color my hillside in. Around that fairy. So now that I've got that glow area, I know where I can not put color as I continue with my darker blues and purples. So at least I caught that, since that's something I wanted to incorporate into the scene. I caught it while there was still time. I didn't get too dark around them before I thought of it. I'm going to pull that down with B60 that we used in the sky. Making room for that tree back here. Okay. I'm gonna let that dry for a moment because I want to put kind of a second hillside in front of that one, and I don't want to do it while it's still super wet. So I think what I'll do while I'm letting that dry is we'll go ahead and add some darker colors to our castle. And I'm just going to throw shadows down. We've got our light source coming in from that right hand side that we established with our princess. And so I'm just going to go heavier on these turrets on the left hand side. Oh, I accidentally went into my fairy glow. All that work. Oh well. We'll be able to make it work. So that was 04. How about some 02? Again, just keeping it monochromatic back here. Go back to that 04. On those, I forgot the little flags. Maybe a BV 29 on the little banner here. That banner is in the fairy glow, so I'm not going to worry about it. I'll try to push some of that 04 that I accidentally put in there out. There we go. So she doesn't get so lost up there. Okay. So that should give that hillside time to have dried enough to add a second little hillside in front. So just kind of skip down so that that kind of fades. Has a lighter area there. Remember, I'm going to be putting in a tree over there. Actually, I'm going to do a little bit tip to tip because I'm looking at that back hillside too, and it's just a little stark. So I want the fade out to be a lot more subtle. So I'm picking up that 66 or 63 with my 60 so that I can get a smoother transition. Okay. All right, back to my kind of trees and hedges that I want to do. Let's bring in a BV20. I'm just going to do kind of the tops of a tree right in here. And that kind of hedgy bush right in here. BV23. The underside we're going to build up because that's always going to be what's darkest on a tree or a hedge. It's not, you know, all the foliage on top blocks the sunlight down below. BV25, we're going to start putting in the branches and trunk of the tree. We'll add a little bit of depth of color down here on our hedge. It's closer to us, so it's gonna be a little bit more. And the BV29. I just want to reinforce our little tree trunk branches. Very light hand, just whispering that nib. And I'm going to add in some little roots and branches coming up the bottom of that hedge too. There we go. It's looking pretty good. Back to that, let's see, BV34. So our little bush is going to have some shadow and ground, help ground it. We're also going to start kind of separating from that hillside back there as well. BV31 again. I need to build up my little trees over here by the castle that I had started. Some 25. Again, grounding this kind of hedge or foliage or whatever is kind of blocking the castle over here on this side. BV34. Ground that in. And the 31. Okay. Let's see where we're at. I think I'm going to take my BV31 just want to pull this even more down. I really want to, just kind of like we blued up with the BGs down here, I want to throw that distant part of the flower field a little bit more into that hazy kind of dusk like light. There we go. That's just knocking those colors back a little bit. Okay. Let's see. I think I'm gonna need a light look of BV20. I want to keep it light since the fairy's right there, but I need color on that part of the castle. There we go. Okay. So that's not looking half bad. I think I'm gonna come in. I just want to add some little bit of just kind of depth to some of that landscape a bit. Come in with that BVO2. And that 31 one more time. Okay. Those are just standing out too bright for my particular. We forgot to add our little root base to these ones too. There we go. That's starting to look more like the one on the left. There we go. Much happier with that. Okay. Now, we're not quite done. We are going to add a little bit more foreground into the mix. But I'm pretty happy with that monochromatic background. The only thing, let's see, I want to add, I think we'll do a little bit of YR31 just because it looks good with purples. And I'm going to pick a couple windows in this tower so they appear to be lit up. They got the candles going since night is falling. Okay. Now, I'm going to come in with an E44. And we are going to put a big old branch coming down out, so that it creates the illusion that there's going to be a tree growing off just outside a frame here. And it's got a big old branch coming down to shade our princess. And I'm going to kind of skip along so that I leave room for leaves, so you don't have to make all your branches always connect everywhere. It kind of behooves you to do some little skipping around so you have open spaces for leaves. So like even this guy, I'll start it here, and we'll put leaves in to make it look like they're blocking, where it's growing. Like so. And then we want the base, the big part of that branch to start coming into the scene. We'll see a crook of it here. And then it'll dip back down. We'll see more of it. And then we'll start to just drag it all the way across the sky back here, coming down like so, all the way off, and it'll finish on the other side of the card. And then we'll just start kind of mapping out all its little bends and twists, and how it starts sloping and tapering off. Maybe it'll branch off here and continue down and split here maybe. And then I'll just color that base in. I think I want a little bit of branch coming off of here, just a little one. And maybe a little, we'll see a little bit here, breaking up. Okay, that's looking pretty good. So now I'm going to take some E49 and we'll just start knocking in the darkest areas on our branch. We're just defining, it's, totally up to you. All the little crooks and bends and, how you want your tree to grow. There's no right or wrong. And just add that texture in, that kind of bark-like loose, wavy line work. It'll add the detail so it doesn't look so flat. Don't worry too much about the smallest little branches. Just there we go. Some 47. To continue adding some of that bark detail and pull out and soften the 49 a bit. Make that a little less harsh of a shadow line. Okay. Now I think I'm also going to bring in let's go with W6. And that's just really going to help us again with that kind of dusk type look. It's going to make it a little less bright, a little bit more in shadow, everything. All right. Plus, I like how the reason why I'm putting this in is by adding some green leaves up there. I like how it's going to kind of frame our kind of lighter monochromatic part of the scene. The really distant part is going to get framed by this really kind of the close-up detailed work, which will just be a nice push and pull for the scene. All right, and so we're going to pick some, you know, greens that kind of match our, I'm going to stick with green greens. I think I'll do a G17. And we just start kind of using that tip of the pen. You kind of give it a pressure on its, you know, and it kind of almost gives you a leaf type shape just like that. So just by pouncing your marker, you create the right texture for leaves, and you can just kind of play those off anywhere where you want to add some leaves growing off your branches. And just by varying the pressure, you'll vary the size of them. Well, I don't think we're going to see any more over there, so I'm just going to kind of stick with this section, and we'll start adding, building up. I'll put in some like G29. Just over top. kind of helps build that up. There we go. Let's see. Yeah, we'll go G16. Just to kind of meld those all together. Okay. Finishing touches time. And that's mostly going to have to do with our little fairies there, since we already did our finishing touches on our princess. And so I'm just going to come in with that white Sharpie marker, or paint pen, water-based. And I'm going to start putting some little pixie dust sprinkles around each of those fairies. Here. And we'll do one more up here. Looking pretty cute. All right. Okay. So there we have it. I'll just add a sentiment to that, die cut it out, and we'll have a completed card with our little princess from the Royal Treatment clear stamp set at Sweet November Stamps, visiting the fairies in the flower field beyond her castle home. Thank you so much for joining me over the past few weeks. I hope you enjoyed this breakdown, and I will see you again in the next one. Stay crafty, my friends. Bye. Oops, off screen. Shadows.